I'm Eric Bana. I'm a program manager on the Hyper-V team.
Cool. So you're working on Windows Server 8, and I saw a demo recently for IT pros about PowerShell stuff in Hyper-V. Can you tell us, before we see the demo here, kind of what's going to be in the demo and who should watch it?
Okay, so the demo is of some of the Hyper-V PowerShell commandlets in Windows Server 8. The people who would watch it are those that are managing Hyper-V or like to learn a little bit about how to manage Hyper-V. And it is helpful if you've seen PowerShell somewhere before, whether it's in person or in some other video.
Cool. All right. Can you show us the demo?
Let's do it.
Great. Let me get that little camera set up here. Now we're gonna do this demo all the way through without a cut, and then just for convenience for some people, I'm going to cut it up into a couple different pieces. So we'll just do a little introductory talking as we go through here to cover the transitions. Okay?
All right.
Cool. Well, what are you going to show us? Where are we starting with?
Well, just to start off with a little bit of context, one of the big investment areas for the company in Windows Server 8 is in PowerShell. In previous release, in 2008 R2, we had about 200 commandlets in box. In Windows Server 8, we have over 2,000 commandlets in the box. There's been a lot of PowerShell work. And what I'm going to show you here are some of the commandlets that we've designed for managing Hyper-V, and also give you some background on the decisions that we made while designing them.
So of those 2,000 or so, how many or so are Hyper-V?
For Hyper-V, we've got quite a few. It's 162 commandlets that we have to do all variety of management. And
now, on your screen here, what's that thing on the left?
This here?
Yeah.
So we have two windows. This is Hyper-V Manager.
Okay.
This is the UI. Looks very similar to what we have in 2008 R2, so you may have already seen this. And then I have a PowerShell window here.
Okay.
And this is just to show you that as we make changes in the PowerShell window, those changes will be reflected here in Hyper-V Manager.
So that's our real-time monitor. Okay.
Yep, no games here. Alright, so to start off with, PowerShell commandlets are structured as one verb and one noun. So, get VM, do this, whatever that may be.
So the syntax I have to remember is I'm going to verb a noun.
That's right. You're going to verb a noun. And there's a set of nouns that we want to reuse, that if you already know how to do things like manage a service, get a service, create a new service, restart a service, then you already know the commandlets for how to get a VM, create a new VM, and restart a VM.
Cool.
Similarly, if you know how to export to a CSV file or import from a CSV file, you already know how to export a virtual machine and how to import a virtual machine.
Same verb.
Same verb. Same verb for the same operation. And then if you know how to take a snapshot of a physical computer, creating a system restore point, you know how to create a snapshot of a virtual machine.
Now, why is the verb called checkpoint instead of snapshot?
That's a very good question. So it's called checkpoint because in PowerShell there's a set of verbs. PowerShell is its own language. So in PowerShell, the verb for creating a snapshot is called checkpoint. So if you learn this once, then in all the PowerShell commandlets that you use, whenever you want to create this point-in-time snapshot, you know the verb. It's always going to be checkpoint.
Got it.
So that's on the verb side. Then on the noun side, we tried to make it easily discoverable. And what I mean by that is, here's our list of nouns, and the thing to focus on are these three prefixes. Everything starts with either VFD for virtual floppy disk, VHD for virtual hard disk, or VM. Now the reason we did that is that if you have a question, it's the first time using these commandlets, you wonder what kind of drives could be added to a VM. Just call it get command, add -VM star drive. And that'll tell you. You can add a VM DVD drive or a VM hard disk drive. Alright, so now you have some idea of the sorts of drives. Your next question might be, what can I do with this object, with this VM hard disk drive? Get command, -noun, VM hard disk drive. Shows you the commandlets you can use. You can add them, get them, remove them, and set them.
So once I have the object, I can find out what verbs work on that object.
That's right. You can pivot either around the noun or around the verb. You can find all things you can start, for example, in the same way.
Cool.
all that, of course, doesn't really amount to much unless it helps you get your task done
Right.
as an IT pro. So our goal is to make it very easy to go from the thought of how to do something to how you type it in PowerShell. You might think of it as think it, type it, do it. So if your thought is create a new virtual machine named new, you type new VM dash name new, and there you go. You can see it pop up here in Hyper-V Manager, and here it is in PowerShell.
Yep.
All right, if you want to get a list of all the VMs, you get VM, boom. There's your list of VMs. Same list here as in Hyper-V Manager. All right, VHDs. So if you want to create a 20 gigabyte VHD and call it test, the way to do that, you want to create a new VHD. Okay, got that here. You want to call it test. Got that here. And here's the size, 20 GB. Now, this is one of the explicit design decisions that we made. We wanted to support these operators that are built into PowerShell. So you can give us things in gigabytes or in terabytes, whatever.
I don't have to do math anymore to try to translate it.
No, PowerShell will do the math for you, as it was. So it sounds a little odd, perhaps, if you see this and you think, who is it that will give us information in bytes? But it's so that you can use the built-in operators.
Right.
Gigabytes, terabytes, megabytes, PowerShell's got them built in. All right, a couple more simple tasks. Start a VM. So you want to start all VMs whose name begins with web. Start VM, name web star. And you see we write progress up here at the top, and you see those VMs are running here in Hyper-V Manager. So our design decision there was to use wildcards. So you don't have to do math anymore because of those operators. You also don't have to type very much, just enough to disambiguate. And then finally, if you want to connect the virtual network adapter on the new virtual machine to the PowerShell demo switch, connect VM network adapter, there's the name of the VM, there's the name of the switch. So we want to make it really simple to minimize that cognitive distance between how you think about it and how you actually do it.
Cool. So in this little first part, you've shown us some of the new commandlets in Hyper-V for Windows Server 8. And in this next section, what are you going to show us? In the section 2 of this little series, what are you going to show us?
In section 2, I'm going to show you how to use these commandlets to do bulk operations. So it's one thing to manage one VM at a time, one host at a time. For some customers, it's important to manage multiple VMs at a time, multiple hosts at a time. So I'll show you that.
Cool.
So to start off with, I'm going to create a number of VMs. So if you watch here in Hyper-V Manager, you'll see VMs coming up. And the command that I'll use, first, creating an array. This is just to make it a little easier to do some bookkeeping later on. The bulk of the interesting stuff is here. 1 to 10, that'll give us an array of 1, 2, 3, up to 10. And then I'm going to create a new VM using that same new VM command that you saw earlier.
Yep.
I'm going to give it the asJob parameter.
What's that?
That's a way of telling PowerShell, run this in the background, don't wait. If you want to get all these VMs created at once, just start them all and they'll get created rather than waiting for VM1, then VM2, and so on. So let's do that. And again, watch over here on the left in Hyper-V Manager. You can see those VMs starting to come in there.
Yep. Cool.
So that's...
one command, 10 VMs, just like that.
Yep, and you can use the same command if you want to get 25, 50, 100. That's the whole point of having automation. Now, the asJob parameter I mentioned, we have that for a number of our commandlets that do what could be a long-running task. So starting a VM, stopping, converting a VHD. If it can take more than a few seconds, we'll give you the opportunity to do that in the background.
So, and usually, will you be able to judge accurately how long it's going to take? Or should you just plan on it might take a while?
That depends a lot on the operation. It's hard to know beforehand. What you can do is while the operation's running, we write progress, and we'll show you 0%, 1%, all the way up to 100. So you have some idea there. Now, this line, this is the most gnarly line in this whole script, actually. This is just me waiting to make sure that all the VMs are created before going on.
Gotcha.
So in this case, all the VMs are created, so we can just go on to the next one. All right. Suppose you've done this bulk operation, but maybe you need to make a change. In this case, let's rename all those VMs that we just created. So I'll do that here by calling getVM, and here I'm using that wildcard again. So we're going to get all these VMs that start with asjob.
Yeah.
And then we're going to call rename VM, because what we want to do is rename the VM. And the new name is the old name, but we're going to replace asjob with batch VM. And then pass through just means give me some object back, kind of like a receipt, so you know what's happened. So as you run this command here, you'll see all these names change. So here we go. You can see the asjob changing to batch VM, and there's our output to show indeed they have been renamed.
Cool.
Now, the reason why we have that pass-through parameter is so that you can always get an object back even if the commandlet generally doesn't return one. So you can think of that like a receipt, so you know what's happened, or the input for your next task. All right. Now we can also do batch operations using the wildcard directly. So here we're going to connect the VM network adapter for all the batch VMs. So let's do that. That's going to go through each of their virtual NICs, connected to the PowerShell demo switch. And that's going to be all in one batch. And finally, if you just want to delete them all, do that in bulk as well. So from creation management all the way to deletion, we want you to be able to do bulk operations really simply.
Cool. All right. So we're at part 3 now of this series on Hyper-V commandlets in Windows Server 8. And in the first part, you kind of showed us the new commandlets and how to find them and what to do with them. And then in the second part, you showed us how to sort of batch that out. Now, what are you going to show us in part 3?
Well, another important aspect of managing servers especially is doing remote management. You might not always physically be at the server, may not even be in the same building. So we built the commandlets so that you can do remote management the same way you do local management.
I don't have to remote into the machine first?
You do not. Nope. And I'll show you that. You don't have to remote desktop in.
Right.
You don't even have to create a remote PowerShell session. So I'll show you here. I'm just going to store the name of this remote server into a variable, just so I don't have to type it again and again. Now suppose you want to create a new VM on a server somewhere, a remote server. New VM dash question mark, that'll give you the help content. And what you'll see here is that we have a computer name parameter, and this tells us which Hyper-V server to run this command on. So if you wanted to create a new VM called remote on this remote server, it's new VM remote computer name remote server. And that's going to create it now on that remote machine. So you can see it here. Notice it's not showing up in Hyper-V Manager because this is the local server we're showing. All right, so suppose now you've got this VM. We want to change the memory configuration. Okay, set VM memory. Set is the standard PowerShell verb for just modifying things. And you can see here again, we have the computer name parameter. So if you can do it locally, we want to enable you also to be able to do it remotely. And so in this case, we'll set the VM memory of that remote VM on the remote server computer. And the settings will change here, just enable dynamic memory and set the minimum memory. And you can see here we use MB.
And again, like in the first couple of these episodes, you used the pass-through to return the object, right?
Yep. Just want to show the result of what we're doing. Exactly.
Just like a visual confirmation of what happened.
Yep. That way you know exactly which objects have been modified and what they've been modified to.
If you entered the wrong name there or something, you go, oh! And you can go back and fix it.
Yep. And in fact, we have the same option for remove commandlets. So if you are removing a bunch of things, now you know exactly what you removed.
Right.
So if you remove the wrong one, oh, okay, got to go rebuild that.
Right.
Now one of those operations that involves multiple servers is live migration. This is a feature that we had in R2 if you had Virtual Machine Manager from System Center. Now it's also going to be available in the box without any shared storage. So just two standalone servers, you can move VMs, no downtime. I'll show you that.
Now, is this available in Hyper-V Server as well, the free version?
Yes.
Cool.
It is indeed. So, and these commandlets are also there.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing to check is whether virtual machine migration is enabled on these two servers. By default, it's not, for security reasons. Okay, so now you're thinking, how can we enable VM migration? Well, that's exactly the name of the commandlet. Enable VM migration. You give us the computers. And
so I don't have to remote into the remote server to allow it to have live migrations. I can just do it from here.
That's right.
Cool.
Yep. Now you see we throw two warning messages here. The reason
you're opening up that machine and you want to be aware that you're doing that.
It's not only that we're opening that up, but you have to choose which migration network you want to migrate over. You could have multiple NICs. In fact, the best practice is to have multiple NICs.
Right.
So you want to choose which ones to migrate. For the purposes of just this demo, I'll use any network for migration.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll set that. Notice here, we're setting this on two machines just by giving machine name 1, machine name 2.
Yep.
All right, so now let's create this VM that we're going to move. You can see it came up here in Hyper-V Manager. All right, so that VM is running. And then the question is, how do you move or migrate a VM? Well, let's just call it get command and see what all you can do with a VM. Okay, here we go. And
there's not one called migrate.
There's no migrate, but there's a move.
Ah, probably similar.
So let's see. If we're going to move VM, we're just going to give the name of that virtual machine and the destination. Now, what you're seeing here is an error because the first server I'm on, the processor has certain features that are not compatible on the second one.
So you have a CPU mismatch between the host and the destination.
Yep, exactly. Now we have a
Now that might affect if you bring up my VM on the destination and it relied on a CPU feature that's not present, then it might not work correctly.
We wouldn't want that to happen. So the whole goal is move it, keep it running.
Right.
All right. So what I'm going to do is stop the VM, enable this compatibility, and then we're going to start the VM again. And because of the pass-through parameter, we can do this all in one line.
Yep.
So what you'll see here in Hyper-V Manager, that VM is going to go offline momentarily and come back up. All right, so now we've reconfigured it.
Yep. So now it can be moved without any problem.
Yep, indeed. So we're going to move that VM. You see the progress bar, so you know this one's going to go pretty quick. We're already at 59%. Okay.
That's handy. Let me know the progress there.
And you see the VM's gone from Hyper-V Manager. As you'd expect, we see the same thing in PowerShell. We look for this VM. It's no longer present on the local server, but it is present on the remote one, and it's still running.
Cool. Now, this has all been sort of Hyper-V specific. How much of it applies to other places or other things I might have to do in my Windows environment?
Well, one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten from customers is that those customers that manage Hyper-V often are managing other things too.
Right.
And storage and networking are the two big ones.
Yep. So
I'm going to show you some examples here of how...
And security. Right?
Yes.
That's common across all of it too.
So I'm going to show you some examples of how we interoperate, in particular with storage and networking, to do some common tasks. So one of the questions that we get is, if I mount a VHD, how do I know what drive letters just got mounted? Well, let's think about this just about the physical Windows world. How would you do this? Thanks to some of the work from the storage team in Windows 8, you can call get disk and pipe that to get partition. So this nothing to do with Hyper-V so far, it's just Windows in general. All right, well, once you know that, once you know how to do this in the physical Windows world, if you mount a VHD, you give the pass-through parameter so you get an object back, just pipe it to the same ones. Get disk, get partition. Now what you'll see, the two volumes, in this case the drive letters are E and F of the mounted VHD. Whole point being, if you know how to do it in Windows, you know how to do it in Hyper-V. And we'll dismount that disk. This, by the way, is one of the reasons why we have standard verbs. So mount, dismount, so you can pair things up
Right.
more easily.
Enable, disable.
Yep.
Yep.
Start, stop. All right, networking. So VMs, very common that you want them to have internet access. So you have a bunch of web servers as VMs.
Yeah.
How do you create that external switch and bind it to a physical NIC so you have internet access? Well, again, suppose you're new to the commandlets and you know you want to create some new VM something switch. Exactly. That's the commandlet. New VM switch. All right. How do you specify then a physical network adapter? Let's step aside from Hyper-V. How would you do this in Windows in general? Thanks to the networking team, there's a commandlet called getNetAdapter that will list all the physical network adapters you have. All right. Suppose we want to now create a virtual switch bound to the KM-Test loopback adapter. Just specify the interface description. You saw it up here.
Yep.
Here it is. Parameters and property names match. Great. There's our physical NIC. And you just pipe that to new VM switch. So if you know how to get it in the physical Windows world, you know how to do this in the Hyper-V way.
Cool. Well, Eric, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.